Thanks for joining us on the King Law Podcast, where we give you a lawyer's perspective on anything legal. Or not. From criminal law, personal injury, and trending legal topics, we're your back pocket legal guide.
You have questions for the
I have
for the guy? So, all right. I know all about Joe, so I don't really need any notes.
Okay.
But the thing that's going to be interesting for people that we've never had is a law clerk, a Supreme Court law clerk, and an administrative law clerk, like a little bit of a different view. There's not a whole ton of law clerks hitting up the podcasting.
That's a shame, because us law clerks are very exciting.
An unrepresented class. I'm too loud, though. What number am I, Bree? 1?
We're good. I'll just lean this way.
It's been a long learning process for us. We get a little better every time.
Every time you do it.
What are we got? Joe's got to be 35, 36 times we've done this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if we don't have anybody, we just do it ourselves.
Yes. Each time gets better and better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
1% each time. So, all right, today, really excited. Joe Waldorf, longtime friend of mine, former colleague, coworker, and Supreme Court judge candidate. I think that's official now, right?
That's official.
Okay. So, I always do a story. I know almost everyone, kind of how we met, but I'm going to start. Joe and I were co-workers a long time ago, and I was mutual friend. Matt Rich was our boss, and I was way behind on my work. I got in trouble, and the short version of the story is Joe and Matt showed up at about 11 p.m., and we worked until 6 in the morning because he was a friend and a colleague, and I needed some help, and he helped me, and obviously I'll never forget that. It was the same story I told for Matt. There was 3 of us there that night, and that's all that I need. That's what I tell everybody about Joe Waldorf. Nobody was ever going to know. You never told anybody. Matt never told anybody. I never told anybody for years. Yeah. And that's Joe Waldorf in a nutshell, there to help out a friend who needed some help.
But that's what you do, Bob, right? That's what you do for friends. You're there for them at any hour, whatever they might need. And I'm proud to call you a friend. And believe me, it was just, Matt had done the same thing for me. That's what colleagues do. They help people through and improve. And here you are. You're doing a wonderful job in your practice. And again, the skills we learned during those years were just critical in our success today, I think. So
today you are the head law clerk for Judge Bill Taylor, the supervising judge here in our judicial district. You're also a really experienced trial lawyer yourself before you had that job, and now you're a candidate for Supreme Court, the highest court in New York State. But let's
take it back to the beginning.
So that's the short version. That's where we're going to get to all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite part about the podcast and what we're doing is we all in the legal field know each other, and everybody's path is so different. And I know a little bit about your path, but so tell us, what did Joe Waldorf give us start?
Where?
Young guy.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Binghamton, New York. I was born and raised there. Just all the great things, a young childhood in a more rural area presented itself. I had a chance to play all the sports growing up through high school, and went on from high school to go to undergraduate school in Boston, where I went to Northeastern University, studied criminal justice, spent 5 great years there, had some very interesting work experiences during my time there. Northeastern had a what they called a co-op program. So for 6 months out of the academic year, you would go into a field of your choosing. So I had a chance to see a lot of different things. I was a loss prevention officer at Abercrombie and Fitch in downtown.
What were people stealing?
Oh God! So I saw all walks of life. I saw young college kids. I saw drug addicts, just come in and grab a table full of shirts and walk out. So I've seen every walk of life, steal something from Abercrombie. But
those polos are valuable.
Yeah, very very expensive. So that was a unique experience. It was just simple observation. We didn't have cameras, so I wasn't hiding in a room just observing people. I was actually out in the field, walking around, observing people. I wasn't in a uniform or anything. It was Abercrombie clothes, so it was a very unique job. But certainly observation and perception and really just paying attention to detail is something I learned from that job. So it was a unique experience.
I guess I never knew that.
You might not have known that about me, Bob.
No, and I didn't know criminal justice either. So how'd you decide to go to criminal justice school?
Gosh, that was something, that's a really good question. So my mom was born in Northern Ireland. And I'd traveled with her when I was a kid, young adult, to Northern Ireland many times. Anyone that knows the history of Northern Ireland, it's a very, there was a period of time called the Troubles, where there was a lot of political violence, bombings, crime. And so when I would go over to Ireland, I kind of had a front row seat to, would be going into a department store and you'd have to go through a magnetometer just to go shopping, or you would see, armed tanks with soldiers, patrolling the streets of Belfast. So I had a front row seat to terrorism, as far as just the impacts that has on a civilian day-to-day life. And so that really sparked my initial interest in crime, law and order, things like that. So that's kind of where the origin story of my criminal justice interest started.
And then after Boston, you decide you want to keep going to school.
Yeah, so pretty early on when I was in Boston, I decided that the legal path was something I was interested in. And one of the tracks that their criminal justice program puts you on, if you're interested, is a legal path. And so I concentrated in that, took a lot of law classes. We took a whole semester dedicated to the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. So we read every single Supreme Court case that has ever addressed the right to counsel and the Sixth Amendment. So the track put me on the legal path. And from there, decided it was for me. And went off to law school at the University of Colorado in Boulder, Colorado. And so that was a change of scenery, to say the least.
Was there a moment while you were in school that you were like, this is why I want to be an attorney?
Let me think about that. So actually, going back even further, there would be that moment. But it would actually go back to high school.
Okay.
So in high school, during our, might have been junior year civics class or whatever it might have been, I was actually selected by my fellow classmates to be an attorney for our class's mock trial program. And so I actually had a chance and we had a little mock trial case, and I got to be the attorney and actually got to be in a Supreme Court in Broome County. We're actually in the historic courtroom there. And so that was my opening. That would be the moment where I was like, I'd like to be an attorney.
Yeah. You're like, I could do this.
Yeah. Not only I could do it, but I loved it. There was a passion sparked even then. And so that would probably be that moment.
Yes. Awesome.
Boston, Northeast, Boulder, Colorado, a little different culture.
Well, yeah. And I also apparently have a thing for bees, Binghamton, Boston, and Boulder. And then I moved to, when I came up here, I was in Brighton. So it just kind of, so it was a very interesting change of scenery. Having lived in Boston, big city for 5 years, you're kind of in the grind, in the rat race a little bit, taking the train every morning, every evening, the commute. And so it was kind of it's first of all a great law school. It was a great opportunity, but just going to someplace new, didn't know a soul out there. That's kind of been something that it was a great challenge presented, and I'll never forget. My mom saw me off from the airport, late August. Get out to Boulder, Colorado, get settled into my place. And then within the first week or so of school, 9/11 happened. So September 11th, 2001, I was sitting in our property class first thing in the morning, and we had witnessed the tragedy that happened that day. So I was far away, but my thoughts immediately went back to friends and family back here.
So talking to the kids who are in undergrad right now, a lot of the people who listen to this are actually undergrads who are thinking about law school or are law students.
Yeah.
So your process, take us through a little bit of, you were a good student in undergrad.
Yeah.
And then just the nuts and bolts of where you're going to go to law school, what was your thought process like?
I think first and foremost, it shouldn't be kind of an afterthought. With how expensive all schooling is nowadays, it should be something you're passionate about, whatever it might be in the law. But have a passion for it, because it's a challenge, it's an expense, and you really need to have that dedication to see you through the ups and downs. But yeah, so being a good student certainly was a great thing. I was president of the Criminal Justice Honor Society at Northeastern. Worked closely with a lot of professors who I really admired. So relationships are a huge part of yes, good grades are important, but having those relationships are also critical. But yeah, studied for the law school admissions test, did well on that, and the rest was history.
What went through your mind to end up in Boulder?
Yeah, I think it was just seeing a totally different part of the world, having spent 5 years kind of in the grind of a big city, just kind of going out west, just go west, young man, and just experiencing, a part of our country that I'd never been. And it was, in all my travels, like when I was a kid going to Northern Ireland, every experience when you get a chance to go away kind of makes you a richer person, experience-wise, and it opens you to different people, different personalities, different viewpoints on the world. And so all those things were baked into my decision to go out there, and I'm a more fulfilled person because of that experience.
I know you're a pretty good snowboarder now. Is that where you picked it up?
No, I'd actually been snowboarding, even as a Binghamton kid at Greek Peak, if you've been down that way. But so I, and the funny thing about snowboarding, I actually hadn't had a lesson as a kid. I just went out and bought one, saying this was it. And so sight unseen, I just had. It was a difficult first couple runs at Greek Peak, but yeah. So I'd been snowboarding for years before that, but it's certainly going out to Colorado. That was an amazing time. It was a very nice way with all the stresses that you have in school. It was a wonderful way to just get out and enjoy nature and just decompress a little bit.
I know that we ask this question to everyone we interview that's gone to law school. What advice would you give any students who are currently in law school?
Advice for kids currently in law school. I think obviously work hard, study hard, but I think the relationship building is something that I think it's the soft skill that you're not going to find in any book. But as Bob knows, when you go into the world, whether it be as a district attorney or in private practice, relationships, those soft skills of interacting with judges, court staff, clients, these are skills that aren't really taught in a law school curriculum. And so
not even talked about. No one tells you.
Right.
It is never mentioned. They will forward and backward tell you about these cases.
Yeah.
And over half of your success is who's your boss, who's your mentors, what do they say when you screw up, what do they say when you do a good job, and who do you know in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only all of that, in addition to that, when you're in the criminal practice, which I ran a solo practice myself, but when you're actually sitting across from someone whose life is in your hands, they've entrusted a very critical moment in their lives to you as the lawyer and counselor, explaining their options, explaining this very critical moment in their life. That's not something so if a law school has a clinical program where you actually get to represent people and help people through their problems, that's really a critical experience. So talking to a young law student, I would say take advantage of that. Because you can only find so much in books.
Great Great answer. You want to talk about law school, though, and they get so far into the details, the minutia of these legal issues. The simple, something our lawyers here do, who I'm proud of, just let your clients talk.
Yeah.
You weren't there, you don't know, and so many of the lawyers are so rushed. They have so many cases, they're taking a bazillion assignments, and when your client calls on Saturday afternoon when you want to be doing something else, are you going to sit there and take the phone call?
Yeah.
And are you going to sit there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour or as long as it takes?
Yeah.
And there's an art to that.
Yeah, and we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and only 1 mouth for a reason, right? And there's value, and it's a critical skill to sit back and sometimes zip it and see and listen, and that's a skill that is just we need a lot more of, I think.
I agree. So, law school, done. Did it.
Yeah.
Now what?
But, and the other thing about law school, I was also very fortunate at the University of Colorado to attend many football games.
Okay.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we have Deion Sanders as our head coach. We are now, we've made the move back to the Big 12 conference. So I'm expecting some great things ahead. But that was another thing about selecting a school is, to go back to an earlier point, is I was far away from my home base back here in New York. So that was a challenge. So kids should potentially, people aspiring to law school, should consider that as well as part of their thought process, where, I came back here and had to, kick down some more doors that maybe relationships that I didn't quite have back here that a local law student might have had if they had went to University of Buffalo or Syracuse. I was kind of an outsider, and so I've been very fortunate to get the opportunities and lay a path here, despite maybe not having quite had those relationships.
So, let's talk about your career then. So, after law school, where did you go?
Yeah, after law school, I'd passed the bar exam and applied to several different places and applied to the Monroe County District Attorney's Office and got a call from I believe it was our second assistant district attorney. And I had a chance to come up for an interview, met with him, and speaking about how it's not all resume and GPA. He had a picture of a dachshund, those little hot dogs. So he was a dachshund lover. Mm-hmm. And I myself grew up and had many hot dogs, little dachshunds. R.I.P. Wally, R.I.P. Chloe. Those were my beautiful little dachshunds. So I spent an hour just talking about our love of those little dogs. And again, it was so much of everybody has experience and credentials, but it's that sort of personality factor that I think is the X factor that's hard to quantify, unless you're sitting across from someone. And so we hit it off, had a wonderful interview. I got called back for a panel interview. As Bob knows, it was all the top brass at the office sitting around a conference table, just peppering you with questions on how you would handle certain circumstances and situations. And I was very fortunate to get the job offer. And on my first day at the DA's office was July 5th, 2005. I remember it well. Driving up from Binghamton on July 4th with all my possessions. And
way to get there early.
This is Sparta!
Oh, shit.
Shit. Okay.
I was so distracted by your...
my dulcet tones.
Yeah, your lack of planning.
Really upset me.
Well, gosh, yeah. In
you
the
were at the
excitement,
DA's office.
yeah. So the story was, I believe I was my first day was on July 5th, 2005. I remember it well, and came up, packed up everything.
Weird. Okay.
What was that?
I don't know.
I don't think I hit anything.
No, I think we're okay.
But yeah. So, came up July 5th of 2005, started. I'm always available for a part 2 if it, demand might, backed by popular demand.
This is going to be the best one.
Well, at least we got some good swearing in. Yeah. You know it's good for his mother.
Watch your profanity.
Yeah. No, but hey, you roll with the punches, right?
All right.
Okay, so
you become a DA. You roll up.
Yeah.
5 minutes before your first day.
what department are you in?
So, first day, rookie DAs, at least during my time, were assigned to the local courts bureau. And I believe my first town court rotation, DAs get assigned to a few different town courts. And so mine were Chi-Lai, Wheatland, Honeoye Falls, and Pittsford.
And what's that like? Like, what's a case
That's
load?
the easy assignment. Sorry. No disrespect.
They let
he
me
got
in.
very hard assignments afterwards, but that's a pretty good living there to start out with.
They eased me into it.
Yeah, well, they knew he was borderline.
Yeah. But, and we started off talking about Matt Rich. Matt Rich had been there for maybe about a year before me, and so he was kind of one of our elder statesmen of the local courts bureau when I came in. And so my first ever court appearance would have been with Matt Rich as my onlooker, making sure I didn't screw anything up too bad. And so he actually was with me for my first calendar out in Pittsford Town Court. And so that was kind of a fun experience. But, when we go back and talk about, just people being there for each other and colleagues, Matt, that's one example of many of Matt being there for me. So,
what do you think are some important lessons that you've learned at your time there?
Oh, goodness. I mean, there are so many lessons that I learned during my time as a prosecutor. I think
we should continue. I mean, I know you started off in local court, but Joe's professional career at the DA's office is really special victims unit, representing people, or not representing people, but prosecuting people who hurt women and children for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually was kind of unique in that I went right from the city court bureau. We go from local courts, we're in the towns, to the city courts, and then I went directly from city court bureau to the domestic violence and child abuse bureau, the special victims bureau. And so that was a big jump, handling incredibly serious cases, young children and women who've suffered through unspeakable physical and sexual violence. Homicides would be assigned to that bureau. So it handled just some of the most significant, heartbreaking cases you could imagine. But, it was just a very stressful time. I think, here you are being the voice, fighting for justice for these women and children who've really gone through something unspeakable, but so rewarding. Just knowing that you're the one out there fighting for them and obtaining justice for them. It was just a blessing. I'm very thankful for that time and thankful for all the people I was able to obtain justice for.
And how long were you there for?
So I was in that bureau for many years. I was at the DA's office in total, going on about 7 to 8 years, I would say. That bureau in particular had the chance to really make lifelong friends, including Bob. We just had amazing colleagues that were so supportive. That bureau in particular, because you're dealing with just so a case type that is so stressful and the stakes are so high. Mm-hmm. And so we really had built a very tight-knit colleague family there. But after that bureau, though, I went up to the appeals bureau at the DA's office, where I had a chance to essentially, assist other prosecutors with any legal questions, defend cases and verdicts on appeal. I had the chance to argue at our appellate division here at the 4th Department hundreds of times. and even had a chance to argue at the Court of Appeals, New York State's highest appellate court. And so I've had, whether it be from a Wheatland Town Court all the way up to the halls of the Court of Appeals in Albany, I've seen it all and argued everywhere in between.
So are there any differences between the courts?
Yeah, and I think my experience is unique in that I've been both a trial attorney and an appellate attorney. And so on the trial side, you're certainly doing everything you can to prepare and be the conductor of a trial. It's a little bit, I don't want to say theatrical, but you're presenting your case through witnesses. You're really building a case. You're the conductor. Whereas on the appeal, the trial is over. The record has been established. And so that's when you have to put kind of the legal thinking cap on.
It's more paper.
It's more paper-based,
yeah.
And really just knowledge of the law and principles and different trends in case law. So they're very different skills, and I've really been blessed to have both of the. I think each skill has informed the other. I felt after my time as an appellate attorney, I was a better trial attorney, and vice versa. So
what I'm hearing is you can do it all.
I'd like to. I've been very blessed in my experiences to really be able to handle anything that can come my way.
So for people who don't know, an appeal, just explain the difference between what a trial lawyer is and what an appellate lawyer is, really simply.
Yeah, so real simply, the trial attorney is building their case, presenting their case through witnesses and evidence, and hoping to convince a judge or a jury of their position. So whether it's a criminal case or a civil case, meeting their burden of proof through that witness or evidence. On appeal, the appeal attorney is looking at the record that was developed in that trial to see if everything happened in accordance with the law. And so it's a very kind of legal-based, you need a real deep understanding of case law and statutes and the Constitution. And you're just looking to make sure things were done right. And if they weren't, you need to advocate for your client. So, and it's not in front of a jury. It'll be a panel of judges on appeal. So that's a different thing than a trial attorney would see. So yeah, there's a lot of differences, but each has been a really rewarding experience for me professionally.
So another way to think of it kind of is the jury really determines the facts. They hear from the witnesses. They decide what happened that day.
Right.
On appeal, the judges make sure that all the laws were followed as the case was brought, as the trial was conducted, and they really review the other judges' work.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, each is a very unique experience. The appeal, jury trials can be emotional. You're making closing arguments. You're making very. Again, I hate to use the word theatrical, but you're certainly on stage a bit there. Appeals are more. It's a cooler environment, to put it. It's questions from judges. Mm-hmm. It's not appealing to sympathies of a juror, perhaps. So it's a very different, more academic sort of experience.
So when you would get an appeal, what was your process as an appellate lawyer? I think there's a lot of different ways to do any legal job, but how did you do it?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is you roll up your sleeves and you just start reading the transcript of the proceedings. There's no better way than just diving right in and taking a first look. Before I've really heard from anyone, I'd like to kind of get my own eyes on a transcript and see what I can see. And that's usually my first thing. I don't want to be shaded one way or the other. I'd like to have that sort of clean eye looking at the record, seeing if anything jumps out at me, and then start getting into the trial file, reviewing what motions were made or weren't made or could have been made. Most importantly, speaking with either a client or a fellow attorney who handled the matter. That's another important thing. So a lot of that happens it's a lengthy process. Appeals are very heavy on the reading, but also the legal research is extensive, and then you have to write. You have to be a good writer as well. So not only do you have to synthesize this body of thousands upon thousands of pages of testimony and exhibits, you have to really put pen to paper and write the argument, and that's a skill in and of itself, being able to synthesize all this massive material and write well. Advance your argument as clearly as you can. And so I think appellate judges appreciate good writing when they see it, and I certainly hope to think that I've provided them with some good written arguments over my years of experience. But writing well is a critical skill, I think, for all attorneys, not just appeal attorneys. And that would be something I would also advise young law students or anybody, is the importance of writing clearly and very succinctly. So.
And you said that you worked in private practice as well. What did you do there?
Yeah, in private practice, I handled a lot of different types of cases. Certainly handled a large number of criminal matters. Again, both trial and appellate. Had some family court experience. Had some experience representing people against various administrative agencies, in our government. So I had a real blessing of representing people across a wide variety of problems that they needed solved. And so that was I did that for several years, and that was a amazing experience. First and foremost, what it takes to run a small business in our state, and just the appreciation I have for people just making payroll, and the business side of law, and also the actual professional side of law, representing people. So it gave me such an appreciation, for when attorneys are out there solo practice. It's a great honor to have been part of that class of people.
And Joe had a unique thing. He was kind of the lawyer for the lawyers, for myself included, and some of the top lawyers that I know were using Joe. There are not many people that myself or James Nobles or whoever, Matt Rich, there's not many people that we can call to get answers, and I know you were helping us all the time.
Yeah, that was one of the great privileges with my experience and friendships, was to be able to be counted on by fellow attorneys to help them with anything they had on their mind, or maybe a tricky case or a legal issue. That was a great honor to be one of the first calls to help my fellow attorneys walk through it and talk through an issue.
And not to speak for you, but that's your job now. That kind of transitioned, that role I think transitioned into another role with Judge Taylor.
Yes.
Justice Taylor.
Absolutely. In 2016, I closed my law practice when I was presented with just an amazing opportunity to become the principal court attorney or law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Bill Taylor, who was assigned to the Supreme Court's civil part of court. And that's a unique experience as well, because I didn't have a huge knowledge base in the civil world. But for the past 7 years, I've had the chance and privilege to be his court attorney, and now I'm pretty well immersed in the field of civil litigation and complex civil cases. So
for people who don't know, what is a law clerk? Like, what are your roles?
So it's a critical role to serve a judge.
If I do say so myself, it's actually more important than the judge.
No, never more important than the judge. But it's a great honor and privilege to serve as a court attorney to a judge. But what my role is to, as a case comes into the court, we're assigned, and I review all of the legal arguments that the parties make. I review all of the facts as part of a motion, anything that the parties want to bring to the court's attention. I review very closely. It's very similar to a lot of my appellate experience, where I'm reviewing large records and then conducting legal research and letting the judge know, here are the differing arguments, this is what the law says or doesn't say, and then preparing draft opinions for the judge and assisting the judge in making correct legal decisions and resolving people's disputes.
I think it's hard for people to realize, especially like a New York State Supreme Court justice, they can hear a divorce, they can hear a murder, they can hear a products liability case or a medical malpractice or any legal issue that you've ever thought about can go to a Supreme Court justice. And it's hard to even fathom the number of questions that a Supreme Court judge might have in a given year or even a given day. So no one knows everything. That's the secret.
Yes.
The secret of a good judge and law clerk is, can I get the right answer quickly?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because you, as a Supreme Court justice, you could hear so many different types of issues that could come before you. We've had cases involving prisoners at correctional facilities that don't want to eat anymore, and so the facility may apply for a forced feeding order. People that don't want medical treatment, that could be something that could come before the court, or someone challenging a zoning law or a town ordinance. There's a wide world of cases that people might not think of. They don't make the newspaper. It's not a criminal case that's making the headlines, but a simple car crash or someone slips on ice on a pavement. The Supreme Court can hear so many different things, and I think to your point, Bob, is it's the ability to always remain curious and research and just roll up your sleeves and find an answer.
So you think about, there's cases brought all over the state of New York for hundreds of years, and all those other cases matter. And what happened here today has probably something kind of like that has happened somewhere else, and it's been addressed. So when you talk about legal research, you're able to go find that decision where another judge has dealt with this issue before and apply that analysis here. And the idea being, people get treated the same throughout the state over the course of time.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's one of the most, to me, exciting pieces of my job. I love the writing, and I love talking through legal issues with my judge. But that first moment where I get to start the legal research, I find it to be almost like a treasure hunt, where I am looking, of course I'm reviewing the cases that the attorneys have provided, but I'm really expanding anywhere I can find, if the attorneys don't have the perfect case, is there something that maybe they missed that's out there? To me, that sort of search is it's very exciting, and I love
like investigating.
It's very much like investigating through history, because you see judges' names, you see just as Bob said, it's just over the course of 100+ years of cases and disputes that have come before you, that sort of investigation, that sort of history detective work, it's a really exhilarating thing. And then when you find the case that's really perfect for your situation, that is just it's extremely rewarding. Yeah. And it's great to be able to have assisted the judge in their duties in resolving a case. So it's very rewarding.
Are you a Westlaw guy?
I'm a Westlaw guy. Yeah.
What do you think about AI?
So that's a great question. As a judge candidate, I don't know if any AI disputes may ever come before me. So, but what I will say is this: an attorney has a responsibility to take ownership of any cases or writing that they put before a court. And so that's something I take very seriously, is you want your citations to be spot on, 100% accurate. You want to be truthful before the court and how you're carrying yourself and the arguments you make. And so if we talk about AI, drafting a brief or an argument for someone, That wouldn't be something I personally would feel comfortable. As an officer of the court, I want to know the work that I've put in and what I'm advocating to the
Or
court.
read it before you submit it. Because
Yeah, very, very simple.
you can't blame the robot.
No, you can't blame the robot, and it probably wouldn't be a good defense before the Attorney Grievance Committee either.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we as attorneys have a great obligation to do the work and take ownership of our work product. So,
What, or was there a moment that you decided that you wanted to run yourself?
So there's a collection of moments over the course of my life, but again, I've had a front row seat as court attorney to Judge Taylor. He's been an incredible role model of being a fair judge, treating everyone with respect, and working hard to get it right. And so that's been an inspiration for me. I'd also say that during my time with Judge Taylor, I've had the privilege to serve as an arbitrator in small claims in Rochester City Court. So I've had a chance to preside over hundreds of small claims matters, helping resolve people's disputes. So I sit as an arbitrator, I review the facts, hear the testimony. So I'm doing a lot of very interesting work, and it's rewarding to help people, to bring my skills to help resolving the disputes before me. So I've had a lot of different examples that have led themselves to this moment and this opportunity, and why I think I'll be a great addition to the Supreme Court bench.
What do you think makes a good judge?
I think there's a lot of factors. I think being intelligent, being smart, and for those areas like Bob alluded to, that there's so many things. It's hard to know everything, but having that curiosity factor of being willing to find out what you don't know, having that sort of humbleness to just open the books or get on the Westlaw. So those are the legal tools are a huge part. But also being fair, not prejudging, really keeping an open mind, listening to the party's argument, being empathetic to the parties before you. I think there are some soft skills that we talked about that not everything is in a book. And I think that sort of, personal touch is a critical piece. And I've been very fortunate to have a front row seat to what it means when you balance a lot of those factors together. So just being a good person, treating people fairly, keeping an open mind, and working hard. I think those are some of the biggest skills that make a good judge.
You have seen so many lawyers come before your court, the court that you're part of with Justice Taylor. What advice would you give to young lawyers who are presenting civil cases in the Supreme Court?
I think, and we're fortunate to just have so many amazing attorneys that appear in front of us. And I think the biggest things are being prepared, communicating to the court if there are any issues. I think those are some huge factors. Again, preparation, good writing, good advocacy, those are all wonderful attorney skills anyway. But letting us know if for some reason discovery can't be concluded during a scheduling order, just letting us know if there's any issues. Just communicating with the court, not blowing us off. Just basic professionalism is always goes a long way. Common courtesy. Bob, I think one of the things that all of us attorneys talk about if we're out socially, war stories are kind of a popular thing amongst attorneys.
Oh man, it's a bad habit. But the people love them. It makes us crazy. But
yeah.
So I knew. We talked before we queued it up,
Yeah.
but I saw the purple tie, the gray suit and the purple tie, and I actually kind of knew. I think I know. You haven't told the story, so hit us with the purple tie story.
Yeah, so back when I was a prosecutor in the Special Victims Bureau, there was a case I'd been assigned, extremely challenging case. Not a ton of evidence. This is not some sort of as a young prosecutor, it's not some sort of CSI evidence all over the place. There's no fingerprints. It was a very old case, but it was a young girl. She'd been raped by her dad, and over the course of many years. And so I had the case, had a chance to meet with this young child at the Bavona Child Advocacy Center, developed a rapport with her, talked about this horrible time in her life, and we indicted her dad. And as we were preparing for trial, she had told me one of her favorite colors was purple. And so I went out and bought a purple tie and told her when she was going in to testify against her dad, this horrible moment, reliving this unspeakable moment in her life, that I would wear this tie and she could look to it and find some sort of comfort going through this horrible traumatic experience and reliving it. Yeah. And so so that kind of began my my love of purple ties, and it was something that meant a lot to me to help her, and we did obtain justice in that case. But it didn't end there, getting the guilty verdict. Years later, and this is a sad part of the story, but her family had turned their back on her, so she had to go into the foster care system. And so years later, the case was over and done with, but I get a call from Child Protective Services that she was about to age out of the foster care system, and she had selected me to essentially be a mentor as she was about to leave the foster care system and become a young adult. And so it was incredibly touching, that someone would have thought of me, years later like that. And so
you impacted them.
Yeah, as much as she impacted me, it was nice to know that I had the opportunity to not only get justice for her, but years later, when I got that call, I went on to help her study for her driver's license. So we sat down and went through the questions and what's a stop sign look like, and just the basics of helping provide some kind of young adult guidance that she never really had the opportunity to have given what happened to her. And so she went on to get her driver's license. I had a chance to do other basic things of life, of grocery shopping. What do you do? And all these little things that she didn't have the benefit of given her experiences. I was blessed to serve that role for her as she became a young adult. So
wow, I love that story, and it kind of goes with what you were saying earlier, where the connection that you make. They're not just with attorneys, and they're not just they don't just end once you leave the courtroom.
Yeah, the power that attorneys have to provide a meaningful impact in someone's life. And you'd asked me earlier about takeaways from those experiences, and that was one of them. It's just the power we have to really help someone, and so that was so every now and then out on the campaign trail you might see me wearing a purple tie, and that became something that I hold very near and dear to my heart. Is it was a challenging time period, but extremely rewarding. It's a case I'll remember for the rest of my life.
It's hard to explain to people who aren't attorneys the burden sometimes. And then you say, sometimes you don't want it. I mean, if you're going to talk frankly, it's you carry it with you on Saturday, on Sunday, when you're playing golf or when you're with your kids or whatever it is. Yeah. That's with all of us all the time.
Yeah, and that's why some of our war stories we kind of sanitize. Just like I did with this one. We don't want to burden others with what we see. But it's something that an attorney and counselor carries with them. As Bob said, some sleepless nights. But being there and helping people is so critical and helps you get through those tough times.
Right.
And you think I mean, I'm gonna cry just talking to Joe. Jesus.
Oh.
Believe me, it's we go through emotional things, as professionals, but we're also people, But as professionals, we help people through, and we do the best we can.
Yeah, then you think to yourself, you hear a story like that, or those moments, and you're like, if I didn't do this, what would I do?
That's, and that's why it's as much a calling for folks like us, that the ability to, whether we're attorneys or judges, just helping people through these challenging times and doing it our best and getting it right. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate privilege, right?
Yeah.
To do work that affects the outcome of people's lives.
And the trust that people place in you. When I was a young DA, the trust that the community placed in me, the trust when you're a private practitioner and someone hires you, or the trust that I've been bestowed on accepting the nomination to run for this judicial office. And God willing, if I were to win the election, the trust that the voters have placed in me to do a good job and do it right and do it fairly. It's been a life of professional experiences and trust that's placed in you that you do the best you can. And so it's an incredible honor. And I look at this as one additional step of people placing trust in me that I hope to earn every day.
I think it's great to see that you are compassionate also, because if you think of it from an outside view, people don't necessarily always end up in court, right? But they have a perceived notion of who and what an attorney is supposed to act like and care about. And I think it's nice to see both of you kind of in like a humanized form of being compassionate for these cases that you've fought for.
Well, and it goes back to Bob's point on AI, the human element matters. And caring for our fellow human, yes, we have the professional side, but we need to recognize empathy, in all our dealings with people. And so, yeah, it's just an honor and so rewarding. Just as Bob, we're out there through challenging circumstances, but that's a burden that we're happy to take on.
Yeah, it's the good and the bad, and the reason it's good is because it can be bad, and the reason it's bad is because it can be good. It's when you're every single case that goes in front of any court, but really a Supreme Court, you're talking about someone's freedom or large sums of money, sometimes life-changing amounts of money, about how a Fortune 500 company. I know the local Harley-Davidson case was a case that Justice Taylor heard here. I think it was a verdict of many millions of dollars in a products liability for a huge company.
Yeah.
These things that happen in court, they're really important, and you better get the right person in there.
Yeah.
Or somebody who has the ability to do a good job. Doesn't mean you always agree with the judges. It means have someone who's capable.
Yeah, these are profound disputes that can come before the court, and you really want the right people in the right places, and I hope to be that, and I hope the voters entrust me with that responsibility. I think my life experience is leading to this moment, but you're absolutely right, Bob. You really want to. You don't need to agree with the decisions, but you certainly hope that you've put someone on the bench that, even though you might not agree, that they've really given it their all, and heard you out fairly and made a determination. So
All right, tell us another story.
Gosh, I mean, we need a lot more time, maybe a part 2 at some point,
yeah.
But another story that I've had a few. One would be there was a young lady, a family had come over from Afghanistan, and this one young girl, she was going on to be a student at a college, local college, and her brother stabbed her repeatedly, nearly killing her. Thank God she survived. But the reason he gave for this brutal attack was that she was becoming too Americanized, and that she was a bad Muslim girl. He didn't approve of how she would dress, and that she was advancing herself through her college studies, and that was an incredibly traumatic case. But again, I had the privilege and honor to fight for her and secure justice for her, and as Bob knows, not only did we fight for children and women, but we also had a lot of familial violence, so inter-family, assaults and murders, and that was just one of many examples of the challenges and the dynamics you face when family members do bad things to their family.
Yeah.
And so that's a very challenging dynamic that Bob and myself experienced in the Bureau. And again, just part of those challenging cases of you bring all your skills to bear and you do what you think is right and what's best and what's just.
You might not have an answer for this question, but how do you deal with the stressors of these cases?
I think having good family, good friends, that helps you get through a lot of it. Having outside work pursuits is critical, I think, as well. Whatever it might be, a long walk can cure a lot of stresses in one's life. Golf, I love to golf. But again, my wife Helen has been just an incredible. Just can't thank her enough for just every day she's there, providing the most incredible support imaginable. So again, friends, family, outside work pursuits, all those things are part of trying to relieve some of the pressures and stresses that we face.
It's interesting just to think back to those times, and I know you're not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore. But it was a good team. It was teamwork. I think we derived a lot of strength from each other, helping each other out. And you talk about teams and leadership and what teams look like and what they feel like. And I know all of us that were there at that time probably think back on that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's certain. It's almost like a military family. You're in the trenches together. You're dealing with some of the most stressful things imaginable, but you're there for each other, helping each other out, picking each other up when the other's down, and giving kudos when during the good times as well. Because there's ups and downs through everything in life, but being part of that team, really, it was a very life-forming experience. Just professionally, personally, it's something I'll never forget throughout the rest of my days.
Closing remark.
I don't know. It's just fun to think back about it. It was a long time ago for both of us, and it's.
Well, Bob, it's fun to think back on. Like it can be emotional. A roller coaster going through the back through the memory road. We're going back through some tough times, some great times. But what I love though is all of those experiences have led us to where we are today and where we're hoping to go forward to. In my case, hoping that the voters entrust me in November with this important office. I think every experience before leads you to what's next. And so I draw a lot of strength and comfort from those times.
Yeah.
So in some ways, Joe, your path is kind of like my path, and it's where we were really heavy criminal, and then you become a higher level civil litigator. And that's kind of a rare path. We're working with folks from all over the United States now on some of our civil cases, and that's unique. They look at me like I'm crazy, but I don't think it's as unique as it's maybe non-traditional, but it works really well, actually.
Yeah, and I think one of the foundational pillars for people like yourself and myself, when you're a trial attorney. Like, you've lived the life of a trial attorney. You take cases to trial. Every Monday, when we were at the DA's office, we're going on another trial. So it's.
And if I'm not doing a trial, you're doing a trial, and I'm going to go watch the trial.
Exactly.
And if I'm not doing one and you're not doing one, somebody else is doing one, and we're going to go watch jury selection, and then we're going to talk about it at lunchtime.
Yeah, and so I think that experience of being forged through experience of trying cases and trying a lot of cases, things happen during trial that are unexpected. You never know what that might be, but having done enough trials, you just know that expect the unexpected, and you're used to that trial by fire, so to speak. But when it comes to the civil side of things, like you mentioned, it's that ability to be curious. And if you don't know something, find it out, or find a colleague who's been there and done that before, or has had some similar experience or knowledge that can help you. And so for me, I've been blessed to have so many law clerks prior to my time that have been generous with their time with any questions I've had. So I've really had such amazing experiences where if I didn't know something and couldn't find it, luckily I would have people around me that can help me.
So where can we find information about you?
Yeah, well, so I have a website, joewaldorf.com. And through that website, you can link to all my other social media. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. But joewaldorf.com is a great place to learn more about me and my candidacy. It's a great honor to have been nominated, and I accepted the nomination for Supreme Court Justice, one of 2 positions that'll be available on the ballot this November. So it's an incredible honor.
That concludes this episode of the King Law Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and check out our socials at King Law Attorneys. And if you've happened to have been injured or charged with a crime, now you know who to call. King Law. Take charge.